الدعم السريع قوات الدعم السريع, which are the rapid support forces. They fit right into the Godzilla analogy. The army's tamperings in the West, where the tribes of the West have been militarized to carry out the campaigns of the army, which is based in Khartoum, in Darfur, in the West. And they have burnt villages and raped women and killed children. It was nothing short of genocide there. That has a direct link to today. These forces have developed and they have come officially into the army. The rapid support forces have grown in prominence and eventually they have become the arch enemy of the army. The RSF and the Sudanese army, which is the state army, are they both representatives of regional or international powers fighting by proxy in Sudan over local resources? Due to this, there is an immigration crisis today. There is 12,000 deaths in Sudan since the crisis of April 15. There is 5 million people displaced internally. Half of those impacted are children. We have ACAPS, which rated the constraints on the humanitarian access to Sudan today as 5 out of 5, extreme. There's people dying every day. There's people suffering every day. There is gold being robbed every day. There's resources being channeled every day. Welcome to another episode of Rugrag. I'm your co-host, Omar. And today we're gonna be talking about Sudan. And we're gonna be touching on the crisis that's happening in Sudan. And for that discussion, sometimes we might engage in using jargon or terms that you may not understand, like for example, the RSF, who are the Rapid Support Forces, or Wagner Group. What we've done for that is we've dropped a few links in our description to help you understand these terms if you are completely unfamiliar. مرحب بكم في حلقة تانية من رجراج. Welcome to another episode of Rugrag. I'm here with the man who needs no introduction, Amro. We have Zach behind the camera today. Zach is a member of our community, and he is a person that you guys, I think, will be seeing more of as time goes. Zach, say hello in your sexy English voice, please.
Good day.
Okay, nice. That is Zacharu. He's running production for us today, so thank you. Today, we talk about a topic that is important to us and personal, okay? We talk about where we come from, Sudan. And it's a very layered topic, as many of you understand. Since April 15, 2023, things have come to the fore in Sudan. And the whole world heard about the crisis that erupted as a result of the military coming into direct conflict with the Rapid Support Forces, which are the RSF. There is numerous analysis on what caused the conflict and how it originates. And there's many quality analysts on YouTube that commented on it. Being Sudanese, and I live so far away from home, I'm actually in one of the furthest places from Sudan, Australia. I must speak for the people like me and say that this impacts us. Sudanese people are never removed from these crises. Why? Because we have direct family members there. We have people we know. Some people have property in what is now a desolate city of Khartoum. We have, memories, nostalgia, just the sense of our peoplehood that's been violated over and over. We are in a time where we need to analyze things more radically than we ever did. We need to analyze identity. We need to analyze what past colonization has done to us mentally, linguistically, culturally, emotionally, socially. And we need to see how we got here. I have my opinions, as many others. Sudanese people are some of the most advanced peoples that I have experienced in terms of political discourse. Everybody can talk politics. We in Sudan have actually such a fervent or such a vibrant environment for political discourse that you can find 5 opinions with 3 Sudanese people. People discuss things. Our narration of history is shaped by the biases that we have racially, tribally, and culturally. That's why it's complicated. Now, another important thing that we need to say about Sudan is historical, very historical, is the fact that Sudan has been and had been the cradle of civilization. It had been the backbone and of what is ancient Egypt. It has been the gateway to Africa from West Asia. And those things alone make it a very critical area of the world. Conflict in it almost surely and certainly pours over its borders. We want today to have a conversation about how the crisis affects us, how the crisis, how we rationalize it, how we think we should adjust our attitudes towards it and our action towards it. Amru, why don't you tell us about how this conflict affected you and your family?
Well, last year, August, I was in Sudan. I was with my uncles. This year, they are with us. Just putting it just like that. These people had money, they had lives, grandkids, and to get a phone call with the news that, hey, our city, the Rapid Support Forces might come and invade and destroy. And the way they rationalize that is if a property looks pretty good, it's probably it's probably stolen money, so we're going to destroy it and steal it.
There is a moral justification to attack those rich-looking properties more.
Yeah. And you get calls about people who don't know whether they're going to escape to Egypt, or they're going to try to fly to the Emirates, or they're going to try to go to Saudi Arabia. I had cousins who escaped and had to basically be on the run for 3 months, 4 months, going through Africa all the way to make it to Saudi Arabia. It's uncomfortable because the way I think about it, these are my cousins. This could have been me.
Yes.
The only thing that happened is that my dad decided to leave and go to the Emirates, whereas his brothers said, no, we'll make a living here. We'll stay in Sudan because this is our land.
And in Sudan, if I may ask, you're from Atbara.
I'm from Atbara.
Okay,
yes.
so this direct impact is in your hometown in Atbara, yes?
It's about to. That's the fear. Like they haven't entered.
So far your family in Khartoum is directly impacted, though,
yes,
for sure.
Everything's gone, destroyed. Yes.
Okay. And this is something. Now let's get right into it, right?
Yeah.
Let's get right into it. Like we have this problem, or we have الدعم السريع, قوات الدعم السريع, which are the rapid support forces. They are what to me is like a good. They fit right into the Godzilla analogy, right?
What do you mean?
Which means that you know how Godzilla is a result of nuclear waste in the ocean reacting with a sea creature. And that sea creature comes back to really remove or to get revenge on the tampering of humanity with technology and with nature that caused the existence of Godzilla. So he comes and wipes Tokyo clean and resets nature. I can't stop seeing it that way sometimes, in the sense that the army's tamperings in the West, which I think a lot of analysts root to 2003, where the tribes of the West have been militarized to carry out the campaigns of the army, which is based in Khartoum, in Darfur, in the West. And they have burnt villages and raped women and killed children and committed like ma khufi a'zam. Ma khufi a'zam is an Arabic saying, Zach, that is what you don't know is worse. What you know is only a sign of what you don't know. What you don't know is probably extends deeper. It's like that analogy of the glacier. You see the tip of it. There's a whole thing under it. So it was nothing short of genocide there. And these are facts even the UN can tell you.
Yeah.
All right? That has a direct link to today. Okay? And these forces have developed and they have come officially into the army. And during the unrest that happened over the last, I would say, categorically 10 years, where we had the revolution, where we had even Hamdok come and go, the rapid support forces have used or have grown in prominence during these times, and eventually they have become the arch enemy of the army. Now, the only reason I gloss over these things, even though I have done speeches and presentations on how it happened, is only because I think that content can be reliably found somewhere else. I think that you can find an analysis of what happened since the Sawra. You know what I mean? Since the revolution, since, our young men and women went out and in a fight for freedom, which was definitely not a waste. Even any failed revolution is a step towards the successful revolution. But now the RSF is a whole different monster. And now these two, the army traditionally, which is to me really designed based on the Egyptian army blueprint, okay? And it really emerged out of the Turkish-Egyptian rule into the English colonization. And this army institution is very strong and was very strong. What is becoming exposed is that this army engaged in a lot of subcontracting and a lot of kind of getting other militias to do their fighting, one of which went really wrong amongst others, which is this. And the rapid support forces, who are now a new force. So these two from the West, and there's also a racial line here. Let's not ignore the racial line. The North Sudan is the Arabized, very Arabized, anciently Nubian. And West Sudan is darker in skin, but also Arabized, very Arabized. The way their spirituality develops, the way that these two regions even interact with Islam and their religion is deep, ancient, and also has very important nuances and differences between the two that are critical to understand, I believe, to understand their relationship today. There is fear in the population to which I belong, which is the Dongula and North Sudan. There is fear of the RSF that is very justified in a lot of ways, and also very irrational and mixed with their shame of their own past, in my opinion. And there is a fear of things going back to normal, which is the army, but also the army is us sticking with what we already had been going through and what is tried and tested.
An evil you know is better than one that you don't.
That is definitely the Sudanese method. Sudanese people definitely believe that, oh, an evil I know. It even manifests in our day-to-day relationships. A woman would stay with a terrible husband because she knows how terrible he is, rather than trust her chances of finding better. A man would stick with a job that he knows his boss is terrible, but because he says, who says it cannot get worse? You know what I mean?
This is a mentality of Sunnis.
And this is a mindset, and this is perhaps a very important thing to address as well, is this mindset will shape reality, and perhaps it has. Perhaps it has shaped our reality.
One question I want to ask you.
Go ahead.
And I don't want to cut you off.
You did.
You've mentioned that
Sorry.
you've mentioned that some of the fear from the RSF might be irrational. Was there tension between north of Sudan, Dongola, these areas, and the west that is racial, perhaps? Before?
There is things even in our community. Sorry, I think I should apologize in saying irrational is the wrong word. I think the whole fear is rational in the sense that I can understand it. I can understand why you're afraid, okay? But it's also supplemented by, I want the evil that I know rather than the evil that I don't know. It also stems from how not adventurous the Sudanese people are and how afraid of change we are, right? I think it's a symptom of that, which hurts me personally. And maybe I said irrational because of that, but I don't think it's irrational, okay? So just to make that clarification. But you and I both know that, for instance, Northern Sudanese people have always looked down on Western Sudanese people. That's the truth. Intermarriages are not a natural thing. Respect is not a natural thing between these two races, and for many historical reasons. The fact that we lived under the shadow of the Arabian Empire, for a really long time, also had its effects on how racially we perceive ourselves. So we started hating those of us, or giving inferior treatment those of us with darker skin, and we started just respecting lighter skin. That is not only a phenomenon that occurs in a peaceful city, that has manifestations directly right now. North Sudanese people, I heard it in my own environments, that why are you going to marry the black slave or the black this, you know,
Yeah.
because there are slave owning communities up north. There were the black slave owners. In the dictionary, they should put a Sudanese person next to that, because Sudanese people are very old and very familiarized with the slave trade. And the slave trade, again, changed over time. It used to be prisoners of war, to a proper commodity, to being irrelevant economically, to now transcending it into modern slavery, which is done through corporations. But if that is a topic that requires its own analysis and everything, right? But at least racially, I don't think Sudanese people have reckoned with themselves and have accepted themselves holistically and accepted their diversity racially and their diversity religiously. Like, one could argue that since our independence in the 1950s, our independence is us getting off on the wrong foot, because our independence was Arab-centric. The government was an Arab majority that's looking out for the Arab elements of the country. What about the whole South at the time? The civil war immediately started again, because they were marginalized, and the West is marginalized, and the East is marginalized, and tribes of Anuba up north is marginalized. What's happening to Egypt has been happening to Sudan from an ancient history perspective. It's the whitewashing, it's the gradual immigration of blackness down south, because as the Asiatics control, this is ancient history, control the Nile Delta, and the greed spread across the Nile, and there was tension over that rich area of agriculture since times immemorial. And the Nile has been critical to that. And the gold in Sudan, which is again an area of contention today, has been critical to that. Ivory in the past, ostrich feathers in the past. There was massive trade, and Nubia, Sudan, was critical to that. Okay? So today is not different from that. Today, what I believe, and maybe this is a great segue into the next area of the conversation, is the RSF, one party of the fight, and the Sudanese army, which is the state army. Are they both representatives of regional or international powers fighting by proxy in Sudan over local resources? Due to this, there is an immigration crisis today. Okay? I had the numbers written down here, I'll just say them for, to be conclusive. There is 12,000 deaths in Sudan since the crisis of April 15. There is 5 million people displaced internally. Like, imagine the internal chaos. Half of those impacted are children. This is our future. These children are our future. نحن كمان عندنا, I'm going to speak in Arabic, عندنا مشكلة الأفندية في السودان. We have people more legitimate of rule than others. Khartoum is where the Afendiya is, the ones that the Turkish-Egyptian system gave them that power based on their racial, cultural identity and how closely they slept with the powers that be, that were used to marginalize the rest of Sudan. These people have an ego that is delusional. These people have a view of life that is delusional. These people kiss the ass of the Arab or the Western while they become aggressively cruel to their own kind. That is a real problem. And how that got created, I have a few friends that I'm going to bring on the show that are really going to discuss this. I don't want to do this topic any injustice, but I want to be a part of the discussion. But we have that problem. What do you call it? We have ACAPS, which rated the constraints on the humanitarian access to Sudan today as 5 out of 5, extreme. There's people dying every day. There's people suffering every day. There is gold being robbed every day. There is resources being channeled every day. There is talks of Wagner, the Russian group, that their leader died. He got assassinated, or he died in conflict with his government. But Wagner was a group that really is familiar with where the gold is in Sudan. We know the result of the agreements post-World War II between France and England and how to divide the area. It was all over resources. So we know we've been getting robbed for a long time. We know that most of our treasured artifacts are in Boston or London or Paris in their museums. And we know that this problem is rooted in us not having self-determination and sovereignty as a people. We are always an accessory to another imperial project. We are an accessory to the Islamic imperial project, and our relationship with that was shaped by al-Baqt and Ma'arakat Dungula, the Battle of Dungula. Fun fact, the Battle of Dungula, all right, and Zach, check this out, okay? The Battle of Dungula is a battle that happened as the Muslim armies started becoming imperialists. So they started going to Persia, and they conquered Persia. And then one of the first places they conquered was Egypt. And then from Egypt, you go down and you conquer Sudan. There are two battles, and they are the first two battles that the Muslim armies lose. And the first one is the Battle of Dungula. And they were lured deeper into the land of the blacks, Sudan, which is the direct translation of the Sudan. And with the bow and arrow corps, the bow and arrow corps was famous historically in Sudan. They say that they could from the top of the mountain shoot your eye with the arrow. They were that good. So they lured the Arab armies and they annihilated them. That battle is not in history books.
What?
It's monumental, that battle, because after the two battles where the Arab armies could not overcome that area, the land of the blacks, they signed something called the Baqt. The Baqt is the longest lasting treaty in the world. It lasted about 700 years, where they agreed an exchange of grains for slaves, plus other things, and they agreed to let a mosque be built in the Sudan. And Sudan was Christian kingdom at the time, so they let a church be built in Egypt, and it was a peace where travel between the two then spread. But then Islam spread in Sudan after that through the movement of tribes into the Sudan from an Arab nature. And then when Islam developed and the schisms happened between Shia, Sunnah, and so on, there were a lot of humanitarian crises where these people will flee into Sudan, which Arabized it further and further, organically and naturally over time. But my point here is those battles where the Sudanese armies completely defeated the imperialist Islamic armies. They are not mentioned in either Sudanese history books or Saudi or UAE or Israel or USA or UK. They are nowhere to be found. And it is a key event for these people. That's a question I'll throw to the audience and let anyone come with any response for that. Okay? But that is one thing, I don't know if you knew it before or anything.
I did not. No,
but
I've heard you mention it.
Yeah, but
briefly.
I talk about it with the group who are interested on these matters a lot, and these people will come on the show one day. But to move this along, now, how does it, sorry. So from your perspective, and you can have no answer to this, okay? You can say, I don't know. Why are we going through what we're going through?
Did you like what you just saw? Are you enjoying this? If you do, please excuse this very authoritative way of telling you to like and subscribe the video. Do like and subscribe the video. It helps us make money.
I usually feel like I'm selling my soul when I do this video.
Oh, yeah. I've sold my soul years ago.
Why is the crisis happening in Sudan now in this shape and in this extreme form? And you can go at it from your perspective.
Obviously, this won't be as sophisticated as an answer as someone who really delved deep into the topic. But I tell my parents this now. Whenever they try to tell me, Amru, do this, I look at them with a big question. I don't take anything you say seriously at this point, because it is your generation and the generation that precedes you that led us to this. We don't have a country now. And I've always had a suspicion since I was really, really young that I will not be in Sudan. My dad constantly went to Sudan, built properties. And every time he took us there, they're like, you will live here. And we're like, we will not live here. Every time you take us, the situation becomes even worse. So why are you still delusional thinking that you will live here? It's not a topic that I open with him on the phone at all. I don't tell him like, hey, how is your houses doing in Sudan? Where did you think that was a wise decision? So my answer perhaps to that question is, it's the mentality of the people. It's the values that we think are ours but are not ours. It's our loyalty to Arabs. It's that.
It's our lack of self-worth and self-determination. And
Yeah.
do you think that the previous few generations, would you say that they failed us?
I think so. I think so. I think so. I think so. I think so because this is really big. I have to dive into what I think who I am is, because this is the way I grew up. I don't feel the regular Sudanese person is empowered. I feel if you're Sudanese, it's not often that you are empowered in your nationality, where you're from, in your people.
The pride. You don't have that pride.
You don't, okay, like, all right, let's take this example. You're from so-and-so, you're an American, right? Like, you're an American, America, you can do it, the American dream. You're Sudanese. What do you want to do? What's your biggest dream?
Get
Go to
married,
America.
or go to America, or make my mom happy, or get a degree in something that I don't give a fuck
Now,
about.
yes, maybe these are problems we had, but I feel like the mentality that a regular Sudanese person has is a weak mentality. And you go around the world thinking that the world either owes you something or that maybe you're worthless. This is something I grew up, maybe this is something that is personal to me.
It's not. I can tell you it's not. I, for one, relate to you.
So
I, for one, relate.
where do we get that from? Why is this passed down? It's this programming that is passed down generations and generations, and this is how you operate. So this is why you get problems with people stuck in jobs they don't like, and like people being mistreated in Saudi Arabia right now.
But feeling like they deserve it.
They
And
deserve it.
feeling
I'm
like
stuck.
they don't deserve better.
This is the roof.
Yes.
This is the ceiling.
And you know, and there's a lot, like I remember this story, right? This is interesting. I was a fresh graduate and I was in Saudi Arabia, and my dad, Allah yarhamu, we were sitting together in the sun, and my dad was very invested in, you know, when we finished uni, hey, you know, I'll link you up with my friend, he can help you get a job. You know, we're starting, and I think a lot of Sudanese people go through that time because we create our own luck. We don't have government structures that give us quotas of jobs or anything like that. So it's always our parents sacrificing something of their social network, of their well-being, to give us something. So my dad was telling me, I found you a job, and it was Rajhi Bank at the time, and it was a call center job. A call center job is a high school certificate job. I'm a guy with an IT degree. First of all, there's a problem with that, but I wasn't tripping because I knew where I was, and I knew that, okay, you know what, I'll save money and get to a better situation, and basically I'll buy my freedom.
Yeah.
Right? But there was a Sudanese guy that was with us at the house. He came to have tea with my dad. I think he was coming to pick up medicine for his family or something, because my dad worked at the university, and he would get medicine, a lot of medicine sometimes, and send it to Sudan and help like people and shit. So this guy was sitting there, and my dad was discussing with me. My dad was a very loud guy. He was like, Omar, tomorrow don't forget to go to the interview. I told my friend, make sure, don't embarrass me, so on and so forth. And this guy was like, what? شنو؟ إنت بكرة بنك الراجحي؟ قلت له والله بكره عندي انترفيو كول سنتر بنك الراجحي فبشوف وكده. قال لي شفته. This is funny. Me and my brother joke about this a lot. قال لي شفت البنك الراجحي ده اشتغل معاهم طوالي. يا اخي لو دفعت لهم قروش.
Wow.
لو دفعت قروش اشتغل معاهم. We immediately disconnected. Even he said that translates, Zach, to even if you had to pay money, work for them. It's a brand. Get behind it, build it, and while I understand the hustle mentality he's trying to portray, it's also a slave mentality here, right? Because first of all, man, you're an older person who have probably done what I attempt to do, right? You're supposed to be inspiring, encouraging, and you should push me to break where you stop. You're telling me to shut up and even like pay some, and I know he didn't quite mean it literally, but it was an indication into his zeal about this dogma of how inferior we are that is subconscious now. Why would I view myself as intelligent, smart, professional, and I'm useful, so I have my life ahead of me. I should not compromise now. You should not teach me to compromise now. Now I should get the best I can get and develop. But my dad remembers that day, and even my younger brother remembers the day, because I was like, what do you mean? Like, that is the reverse of my mindset. I am working where I'm respected, and I am not going to work where I am not. And I'm not saying that in the bigoted way where, no, I'm me and I'm like, no, but we Sudanese people need to think like that. We need to think about our self-worth and what you are just as an entity, and how much individual worth you possess, right? We don't have enough of that in Sudan, and that is connected to our social structure. When we're young, any expression that is very individual, ده قايل نفسه منه، ده بيعمل في شنو؟ انت قايل نفسك هتبقى كده؟ يا
They ridicule you immediately.
They ridicule
and belittle you.
And savagely and seriously.
Like
nobody comes and makes up later and go like, yo, don't worry about that. You're gonna be a champ. No, people go like, no, be normal. Don't try to go left, right. Don't try to be that special. And I think that is rooted also in an attempt of society to self-preserve some sort of identity, but it kind of lost its way. Now, your identity has been tampered with. You have been sexually programmed to be Arab in thoughts and African in skin. And that contradiction is a big crime.
What do you mean sexually? I didn't think you'll use that word.
No, sexually I mean is because, what I mean by sexually is, you've heard of the lost generation here.
Okay, yes.
The Aboriginals that were taken from their homes and they tried to whiten them and make them integrate to white society. You've heard of a similar dynamic in South Africa when the apartheid was there. There was a race that is mulattoes, that is caramel, that was established between the blacks and the whites to help oppress the blacks. There was that in ancient Egypt. Between the Asiatics and the blacks, there was a race in the middle. And this is a colonial tool that people don't talk about enough, which is a sexual crime. Because the colonizer comes and through patriarchy exploits matriarchy. Okay? And they create a middle class of caramel, half black, half white people who are loyal to their father and their pride, which is white, and they hate their mother. And that manifests in the woman getting disenfranchised, by the way, with time, and the man getting glorified. Now, how many thoughts are triggered by that? I understand, and we can talk about that further. But that, to answer your question directly, there is a colonial tool of creating that half-caste race and using it to oppress indigenous people. It's very controversial. I think it's very dangerous to say that, but you could use the United States, you can use Australia, you can use South Africa, you can use ancient Egypt.
That's not even when they bring people from outside to oppress the black people.
No, not even. That's even more, it's more primal than that. It's more immediate than that. And the whole country of Egypt is a result of that. What is an Egyptian?
Oh, this is people are gonna hate this.
And I'm not saying this to alienate or insult, but to understand our surrounding and where we are from a historical point of view. An Egyptian, because there's Asiatics that came from Greece and from what do you call it? شبه الجزيرة العربية, the Arabian Peninsula. These were tent dwellers by the time Egypt was a civilization. Egypt was a black civilization, right? And these tent dwellers came into Egypt via the sea. The Mediterranean is right there, Greece is right up there, and the Arabs are there. They started coming and they started being traders. They brought their own skills, they brought their things. And the black indigenous people were racist. They were the sunburnt people. The Greeks called them Ethiopia. Ethiopia are the sunburnt people. Ethiopia was not Ethiopia today. Ethiopia was everywhere from Egypt, the Delta area, Sudan, and infinitely into Africa. But these people then started mating with these people. And the first dynasty was actually where Menes, or can be referenced as Narmer, united the people as Asiatics and Africans and said, you know what, everybody here now is here, but we're not taking any more. And he kicked the armies out. These people started mixing, okay? And the Asiatics always were seeking the black women, whereas the Asiatic women were not available for black men like that. They were behind, and there's remnants of this cultural pattern till today. So that's how you know it's true. Like I say, people go like, oh, if it's not in the history books. No, there's also something called observation and speculation. That is the most important thing of science. If you're not free to think with the facts that you had, then what is the point of education? Education is supposed to be supplementing a personal view, which could be true or untrue. But anyway, that mulatto layer was created by that tension, by that clash between these two races. Then that race became the majority, which is the half black, half white. That race started having independent thought, like, wait, the Asiatics use us, these blacks don't like us. You know what? We're going to start acting that's Egypt. Egypt is that Afro-Asian. And that's why Egypt has the most severe identity crisis today. That's why Egypt gets flipped upside down once somebody starts going like, yo, the pyramids are black. They get really mad because it's true. And also because today it's the Arab Republic of Egypt today officially. So whoever these Arabs are, they already won a long time ago against these blacks who are indigenous to this land. And these blacks kept moving south and south and south, and it's still happening. This pattern can be observed historically. So what was our original point? How did we get here? What was
the question was initially, who's to blame? How do you think we got here?
Yes, you said, yeah, and we were expanding on the fact that our education, our culture, the way we behave towards each other. I just think that if the president of a country is using violence to silence it, it means the father of a home is using violence to silence his children. It all connects. If you're oppressing your children and not engaging them intellectually, the government is not going to engage its people intellectually. It's gonna, when you start asking the tough questions, you're gonna get slapped. Because guess what? That's what the mother does at home when a child starts asking the tough questions. None of us Sudanese people get, what in the liberal white world they call the sex talk, or anything that is supposed to describe to us our experience and what. So we Sudanese people, we go through this weird sobering where we grow up in fairy tale land. We live with the Arab childhoods, what they live, but their childhood is consistent with their adulthood. The expectations set up in their childhood are met in their adulthood. The expectations set in our childhood, we go through that sobering where we realize, holy shit, I can't live like this guy because it's not the same rules for me. I don't have any welfare. I don't have any security in a material way. If my mom dies and her paycheck goes, I'm fucked. If my dad dies, I'm fucked. And you watch your dad, especially if you're in one of those Middle Eastern countries, you watch your dad work for 50, 40 years, an exemplary career, and not get his due worth for it. And you know what that does? That emasculates the man. And that decreases the self-worth of a woman. And that makes us aim lower. And that makes us hate each other. And that makes us not believe in great things, or great art, or great beauty, or great success, or great abundance. It makes us not think like that, because we go like, yo, my dad was the smartest motherfucker I know. Look how he got played. How am I going to overcome this? And another example of that is when I was getting married, man, you know, my uncle, I called my uncle and I went like, hi, uncle, I'm getting a visa to Australia and I want to marry your daughter and we're going to move to Australia. He told me, what the hell would Australia want with you? Why would they give you a visa?
Oh man, this is what I mean by that.
You know,
And
right?
you're not even meant to ask a question. You're meant to check yourself. Really, it's not a joke.
And this is real. This is real. Who are you to make it? Who are you to be that guy? Who are you? And this is from our own people to us. Again, it also connects to the Atlantic slave trade. People love to blame these white people, but it was always a black person that sold a black person. It's always a black person that was treacherous to his brother, and sometimes in the same family. So this is, to me, an invitation to radically challenge ourselves. This is an invitation to reinvent our identity. This is, you know, and all these people, there's very, very intelligent Sudanese analysts. But I think that the social conditioning and the identity crisis that we are going through is deeper than even what an intellectual can perceive. It's almost a spiritual exercise to say. It's deeper to understand it because it's been going on for a long time. It's deep, it's well hidden, it's systematically enforced. So I think what we should address is, wait, why am I so forgiving to a white person and can carry a fight generationally with my black neighbor? Why? Why am I quick to forgive the oppressor, but I will never forgive the person who's oppressed with me? Second of all, what is Africa thinking about us if we are the gateway to Africa and we're supposed to safeguard African interests? The king in Africa, the king in Sudan, the leader of a family doesn't emerge from a position of, oh, I am, I am the one who's inheriting rule. No, it comes from they give it to the person most able to carry out the will of the people. The direct manifestation of the will of the people is the worthy leader of the people. That means, the person who can articulate, the person who can fight, the person who can determine what is the way to go in times of extreme pressure, the person who safeguards everybody's fair share, even in moments of shortage. These are the people that get elected leaders organically in African communities. And African communities have something in common. There is a bridge between us that we can all feel that we can't articulate. And we have a shared experience today. There's Africans who dealt with the Arab world for thousands of years. There's Africans who dealt with the white world now for hundreds of years and thousands of years. There's Africans who went to India. There's Africans in Asia. If Africans build bridges between themselves and share their experiences, we will have solutions to world problems. We will have solutions to the climate crisis. We will have solutions to the racial problem where social movements are getting robbed by corporations. We know how to defeat that because we know how to tell bullshit. So yes, I think I agree with you that the problem is in us and we will have to start with us. However, now is a time of crisis. Now there's people fighting for their immediate lives. And you, I can imagine, like many other Sudanese people I know, are supporting your family, either financially, morally, both. Opportunities. This is the time where you're probably getting uncles and aunties telling you, hey, my children are young, they want a future. Everybody in Sudan now, the youth, is paralyzed. Most of the people don't go to uni now because all the unis are not working. And most of these people are going through their 20s, which are the peak in terms of developing that way, in a state of paralysis, right? I am lucky I am here. You're lucky you're here. But also, again, we're also not lucky because we're not removed from this problem. We are not exempt from this problem. It affects us. It animates us. When we walk everywhere, we carry our people with us. And this has been happening for thousands of years. It's not like we can undo it, even if you want to undo it. It's very difficult to not feel a feeling so innate to you.
I've been having nightmares for the past week that my relatives are dying almost every night.
That's crazy.
Every single night.
That's crazy, and that's scary, man. That's scary. What is the role? What do you think is the role of the diaspora? Do you know what a diaspora is?
Is that people from the country or overseas?
Yeah, people who are, yeah, correct. Our diaspora, I'll give you some quick stats.
Okay.
Most of our diaspora are in West Asia, Emirat and Saudi Arabia. We have a community in the United States, doesn't exceed 100,000. We have a community in the UK, also in the thousands, I believe 20,000 around.
18, yeah.
Europe, obviously, we have a community, but it's not like, you know, the Asian community, like the Chinese community in some of these countries or so on. So we are concentrated in West Asia, which is, again, makes sense. What do you think these people could be doing now to alleviate the crisis?
The only thing they can do is get their relatives outside the country, because that's the number one request.
For now. So this stage of our struggle, you think get people out,
Get people out.
get them to education.
Offer opportunities. That's it. And which means the countries that are receiving all these people, cheap labor.
So you think that
It's really
that's
true. That's what it
crazy.
is. Yeah, man.
That defeats the purpose. But like, I get what you mean.
That's what's gonna happen.
No, but also, do you think that in saying that, are you also saying that the solution to this is actually long-term? We have to invest in these young generations now rather than try to find a political solution here and now to disarm this and disable that. And
I'm thinking more of from where I am and from where my family is. That's also a problem, man. With Sudanese people, when this happens, you're like, okay, what can we do now to save ourselves immediately and leave?
panic, yeah, there's a panic thinking.
This is
yeah.
not me. This is what's happening in this city is not me. I gotta run away. And you'll just let them continue doing this.
You remove
the other
yourself
solution
from the
is
struggle.
what? Like you're gonna go and pick up a weapon and fight? How is that gonna? What is this doing? I feel like you're in a bad situation.
You're
if
in a
Sudan.
pickle. No, but also we have parallels there with also what's happening in Palestine now. Okay, so today Palestine, what's happening in it is an absolute tragedy. It's crazy, right? And you know how the events unfolded as well. I'm one of these people that I remain skeptical of the official record. Okay, the October 7th happened. It justifies a big military intervention from Israel. Israel clearly wants to occupy Gaza. The US doesn't want it to occupy Gaza because the US wants a two-state solution and wants to really, its interest is imperialist, to control the resources of this area and keep the powers balanced so nothing becomes a superpower, but it remains under our control. Israel are becoming powerful enough to realize that the US wants to do that with them. Israel want to follow their own interests now, which Gaza will take it. We have superior military power. We will bomb until the last Hamas person is left. Okay? The Hamas themselves are the representatives of the Palestinian people. I don't buy that. I don't buy into the sanctity or the cleanliness of Hamas. Neither do I of the Israeli government. The Israeli government is terribly flawed and is making decisions based on what they perceive as an existential fear of their sovereignty and nationhood and peoplehood. And of course, it's like also a woman that's been divorced recently and lost faith in women, lost faith in men.
Yeah.
Right? It's a natural human reaction, right? The Holocaust have kind of done that to Israel, where any sort of submissiveness will result in that. So the rationalization is flawed, and it creates an overreaction. Hurt people, okay? And the agenda, the fact that Israel is also, like this war, people forget that it saved Israel from internal collapse.
How do you mean?
I mean, Tel Aviv Israelis and, mountain Israelis, which some of them are more Orthodox Jewish, the others are more outposts of liberal thinking. So these people identify with the West that we are American Israelis, and so these ones go like we are Middle Eastern, olive oil making Israelis, very close in their identity to the Torah and so on, while these ones are more secular. And so there was the judicial reforms in Israel was an exposition of this tension, because these people are growing in population, because being more religious and being more cultural, they have more babies. These people being more secular, they don't have enough babies. So the population was becoming these people, so the majority of what was going to come here. And these people were getting really afraid when the Ashkenazis from this place really ruled the court system. And this conflict of power was coming to the fore, and then October 7th happened. So I'm just throwing that out there. That war kind of united Israel again.
Introduce a common enemy.
Yeah, and as far as Palestinians, my personal bias, man, I have best friends that are Palestinian. I have some of my best friends that I grew up with that are Palestinian, okay? And their struggle is so real. The camps in Jordan, in Lebanon, all these Arab countries looking down on them while pretending to help them. Like, Palestinians also need to get real with all these other Arab fuckers. They also need to go like, yo, you know what? Like us Sudanese people, we need to do the same thing. We need to unplug from this Arab engine because it's not serving our interests, man. You're going to serve your interests. You're not going to get me the liberation of my people. The liberation of my people can only be achieved by my people.
Why did you mention the Palestine-Israel conflict
Because,
while we're talking about Sudan?
Because there's parallels. Because there's parallels that we can use from both sides of the conflict, right? The Palestinian conflict, to me, I feel it, I'm educated on it. I understand the lobbying that happens in America. I understand, the Israel lobby and how USA was critical in the formation of Israel, and how post-Ottoman Palestine mandatory territory and how the Sykes-Picot agreement divided that, and how even Britain finessed France out of Palestine. We're educated on that. I think me and my circle, we're educated on the proceedings historically, the immigration waves that the UK sanctioned in the 20s and so on, and which created a need to galvanize in the local Arab population, and it created their nationhood. In the same time, soon after, in that time, Jamal Abdel Nasser happened, which also connects. But I think that problem needs to be addressed because, first of all, social media reduces that conflict and makes it kind of, like who's gonna cry louder? The Jews, the Israelis are pushing propaganda on social media, are pushing their own narration or narrative of the problem. The Palestinians are pushing their own narrative of the problem. In each of these narratives, the other is the enemy. And everybody's crying louder. But what are you all doing? You're doing also the same thing, right? Israel has superior power, right? So a person who has superior power usually have the responsibility to initiate good action and peace talks. I completely blame Israel for that. But what about if I'm Palestinian? How am I going to be talking? Am I going to be playing the victim? I don't fucking play the victim. Even me being black now and having gone through an oppression that I believe is way longer than that one. We can't play victims. We have to play to win. So to play to win is to educate your young folks, to guard them, is to educate them on the facts of the matter, and to create a resilience. And Palestinians are a people that are struggling. And there are people that they have absolute heroes, but they also have traitors. Find your traitors and find how that happens. You know what I mean? And it's not mine. It doesn't impact me as directly. It does impact me because it's still a neighboring country and it's in our region. But it doesn't impact me as directly as what's going on in my country now. That's why I can't give it more of my airwaves, right? But I am happy to, we're going to also do an episode, me and you were planning, but to bring a Palestinian presence and discuss our thoughts with him or her and really go through these things. But for now, I'll let people delve with that. But to answer your question, there's parallels, man. There's parallels, first of all, between the Jewish people and our struggle. There's the story of Musa, alayhi salam, or Moses, right? Who was born in the Pharaoh's palace and had an identity crisis. These are my people, but I was raised here. Does it sound familiar?
Yeah.
Does it sound familiar? And if we study that with one thing that Israelis do or the Jews do so much better in their education than us Muslims is they psychologically analyze these prophets and they look at them as characters and how they developed and how they needed their failures to form their triumphs. We look at them as, just whenever you hear that name, just why don't you cry a little? That's crazy.
So ridiculous, man.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
If you're inspired by a character, you should aim to emulate it, right? You should not just bow down, man. That's that's colonialism. That's colonialism. That's what that is. You made us, whenever we say Muhammad, everybody bow down. But I don't know what that's about, though. Why am I bowing down?
And you remove the humanity from that person.
Yeah,
Because
you're defeating
you make
the
him
purpose.
a god in a sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll go to the next question for you. Okay.
Did you like this?
He's getting married.
I'm getting married. So help me raise money for my wife. You see, this is a real ring. You know how you can help me get married? You can like and subscribe the video. Now tell me that wasn't creative. I feel like there are some questions that are really important that we haven't still asked. What do you think will happen to Sudan? Where do you think the people will be? Is it over? Because this is something that I feel. I don't know if there is a country to go back to.
Okay. Wow. That's a great question.
Where are we gonna go to? I feel like the last time I was in Sudan, that was the last time I'll see Sudan.
Do you really feel that?
I think so.
And I think a lot of people where we're from feel that. I think it's a real feeling.
Where's the airport? Where are you gonna go? Where is the airport, dog?
I think that this is a critical moment. I think that, let's look at it, possibilities from all sides.
Yeah.
Right? RSF wins. Okay? And their agenda, and they rule, let's say. That is, I think, the scenario that most of the northern Sudanese, or most of the Sudanese people, even the diaspora, are terrified of.
Yeah.
And it is legitimately scary. Imagine they are militarizing tribes that have generations in warfare in Africa. They're militarizing them and they're making them get into people's homes. And who did I hear? I heard in one of the interviews that the RSF used Israeli intelligence for their tactic to get inside the homes of people in Khartoum to make it impossible for the army to extradite them. And I don't have the facts for that, but I can reference in the description the YouTube video where I got it from, which is an interview.
What do you mean get in the homes of...
You know how the RSF got into the homes of the people in
houses?
Khartoum? Because they don't have an air force. The army has an air force. If the war is through the air force, the army is going to win in a few days. But how to make the war impossible for the army to win? Is get in the homes, because they're not going to bomb the civilians and so on and so forth, right? At the same time, the military got exposed for engaging in subcontracting and not really having those many numbers they claim. So the RSF wins is the scariest scenario for Sudan. But also, it is a counterbalance to what this corrupt government has done for the longest, at least since 1989. It's a counterbalance. Everything that goes up must come down. So from that perspective, it's understandable that could happen. But in reality, or the army wins, and then we're gonna get propaganda again. Yeah, we're gonna save you. And the Arabness is gonna come up. But I think the population of Sudan is has moved past that won't fly anymore.
Yeah.
That what I think is that from experience and from history, I think that this war, the powers that be that control it, the regional powers, are gonna elongate it.
Yeah.
As long as possible, and they're gonna, like how Iran and Iraq, their war in the 1900s, their war in the when was their war? I'm gonna get it now. Iraq and Iran war. The point I'm trying to make, this happened, in 1980 till 1988. America, whenever one of the two sides is about to win, they equip the other side to elongate the war. Why? Because the military complex benefits, sells.
Makes money, yeah.
Also, because there's no regional power that will emerge here. If Iran beats Iraq decisively, imagine the amount of power they're going to get in this region, and now it challenges your power. So I think some of that is happening with Sudan today, where let's elongate it and let's get the resources. There's a lot of infinite gold to get in Sudan, infinite resources, one of which is sesame and sesame oil and its derivatives, peanuts. There is
gold.
There's gold,
and
metal, more importantly, there's the human resource for all their wars with Yemen, I'll leave the rest to your imagination. Basically, there's the human resource that will only take $5,000 to go die for someone else if they are absolutely broke.
And not get paid by the end of it.
Yeah, and be destitute. It's what that motherfucker that told me, take a Raj hijab and pay them. That's his target audience. Because they have no other option. He wants to feed his mama. So you need to create the conditions which makes this guy say yes. Okay? So that's another thing. So the fight is elongating, but we also, what's scary now and what's unconscious is we also know historically that what happens in Sudan fully indicates what's going to happen in Egypt. There are cracks showing in Egypt today that kind of can help you foreshadow. Okay, Egypt has Palestine and what's going on with Palestine and its borders, and Egypt is severely failing Palestine as a sovereign state, which it's not. Okay, it's failing that. It's also failing the Sudanese crisis. A lot of people will tell me, oh, they're letting most of the Sudanese people in. Man, people should be let in Egypt. Sudanese people should have free entry to Egypt generally, bro. Like,
and that was the case for a while.
Yeah, bro, like,
that was the case.
It's not our land. This is like, we're indigenous to this. It's like how Australians get in New Zealand. This is you cannot go like you're giving us that. Okay? But that's another scenario. So they keep it going forward. They keep milking the resources. They keep the people dying. They create the tension. Until what? They negotiate a peace? If they negotiate a peace, do things come back to normal? Do we now talk to the civilians that you create your government, we will protect it? I think we need something more radical, even though that sounds scary.
What do you mean? What do you think? What do we need? Because it will go on.
We need, ideally, like fairy tale kind of thing. Fairy tale kind of thing, we need to reset. We need this whole, like, the government needs to go. Like, the solution is never with them. They're weak, they're outdated, they're not technologically enabled, they are not in grasp of our identity or our history, they're not educated. They are people who monopolized industries in Sudan by the might of the sword for the longest time, and they had their day, and they had their akhirah, they had their judgment day, and they need to go. Now, this newcomer, though, is concerning, because this newcomer hungry for authority from the west of Sudan, which is a legitimate indigenous person to this country. This person is not in a country that's not his. Let's get that out the way. But this person is weaponized, militarized by crimes of that regime. So we need, I think, a revolution that is on an identity level, on a cultural level, that finds a space for every Sudanese person to make a winning play within this nation or statehood. This is if we're going to go for a state. These people need to be educated on their peoplehood and their links and the fact that when they hurt each other, they're hurting themselves. So we need to detach from the powers that are external to us that control us. We need to understand Arab colonization. We need to understand Western colonization. We need to understand how they make us behave, how that links to the divorce rates today, how that links to what we think is right and wrong today. You know, we need to start reading anti-colonial literature, like Frantz Fanon, like all these writers that wrote about decolonizing. We need to decolonize even while this war is going on. We need to start liberating our minds. Because if we don't do that, things flow this way: mind, thought, action, outcome. Not outcome, action, thought, mind. That's fear. That's how fear works. Creation works the opposite way. So, yeah, you know, it's idealistic. Most people won't have time to go like, yo, give me an immediate solution. Which army should win? Sadly, we're past that point. Sadly, we are in a crisis. Sadly, now we got to go through it and come out the other end with our hands clasped to the things that we can't lose, while letting go of all the things that we oppressed each other with. The racism towards the other races, the view on Ethiopians and other black races, Sudanese, your خيانتك للأفارقة, your treason of other Africans who share your skin color. You calling them Negroes, calling them unintelligent, joining the Arabs and reducing them to people that act out of sheer impulse, because that is untrue. I met some of the most intelligent Africans, and that is a part of our colonization. We need to get it right with the people we oppressed. We need to get it right with ourselves. We need to get it right with our children. We need to stop favoring others at the expense of our own. We need to respect ourselves, because if we don't, no one will. And that is true as an individual, and that is true as a society. That's what I think.
Wow. I feel like that was the Rugrag opinion on what's happening in Sudan. If you have any questions, comments, you disagree with something, let us know.
And also, what should we expand on? I understand we didn't exactly provide you a news report here or a documentary from Al Jazeera, but we gave you our views, right? And we can expand this. We want to have this conversation more. I think this conversation should be had with even more people and more opinions, and disagreements needs to be welcome, and there needs to be space for them. Because I think another problem that we have is that it's like a dog-eat-dog world when it comes to opinions. It's like one person could be right. But we have our truth. There's the human truth, and then there's God's truth. And God's truth is the contradictions between all our truths. So discussions and debate needs to be encouraged. Have more discussions, have more debate. Stop being afraid to voice your opinion. Look at how crazy these opinions I have are. I'm not afraid of them, because I've done my work and I've done my reps, and I stand behind them, and I'm happy to be corrected. I'm humble to that. I am humble to that. But we need to have more debate, and we will. That is our intention, is to facilitate and enable that conversation. Okay? So this is a door opener, and this is also something that is close to my emotions, so maybe it has been difficult to speak about, but we need to speak about it, and we need to speak about it with poise and with equanimity. And we invite you to this conversation. We invite you to it, wherever you're from. Sudan is so vast that I couldn't have covered everything related to it in this. Me or Amru. We are two Sudanese individuals. We are not Sudan. So we can speak of our view on it, but we invite you to this. Who can drum better, you think?
I can't drum for shit. Maybe you have a musical
Let
talent.
me see. I am musical, but I don't know if I can drum.
That's the end of the episode. It's over.
I'm not satisfied with that.
No, you're not satisfied with the end.
That's terrible. I feel like you should let me practice for about half an hour.